Would an hour earlier help anymore, Alexander? Or is that still evening over there?
It's fine. It's 6 p.m. here.
Hmm.
All right, we the recording has started. So yes, let's get going then. So this is the February 27th, 2018 Rook Community Meeting, and let's go ahead and jump right into the agenda. One of the first things that I wanted to talk about today was any issues that we have open for 0.7 and if we're going to need to do any releases to address them. I know of one fix so far that has been backported to the 0.7 branch for being able to publish the Helm charts to the new S3 buckets. So I believe that we will have to follow up in some way to actually get that the Helm repo updated. Bassam, do you have a comment on that for what the next steps may need to be?
I've not been able to test promote because that only runs when we actually run the promote build. So I'm hoping it works. It was the wrong repo, or the wrong bucket. So, but I think we should. Well, the one way we'll find out is when we should run it. So
oh, go ahead.
I'd say let's once we get everything else in, let's do a build and see if we can deploy it, and then see if it works.
So my question about that, two questions. One, the first one would be, was the bucket name change, was that associated with the transfer of ownership to the NCF?
Yes.
Okay, got it. And then is it possible to rerun the 0.7 build, or is it idempotent in the sense that you can do a promotion and it will overwrite the existing 0.7, or we need to take a 0.7.1 for this?
Well, the code has changed. So unless you're willing to tag a different commit hash with the same 0.7 tag, which is bad practice, it's going to get a different tag.
So we should just run the new 0.7 one.
Yeah, so my suggestion is we just tag 0.7. If the code hadn't changed, then you wouldn't be able to do that, but it did change.
Yeah, and Jared, there is one more change in there. The doc changed for upgrades too. That'd be good. Well, it is backported already.
And we're picking up a new Ceph, which is invisible in code right now.
Oh, yes, exactly. So, even more reason to have a .1.
Yeah.
Okay, so then I tried to catch up on the conversation about the new Ceph version yesterday. Now, is that, are we picking up 12.2.3 because the new packages are released and therefore the build will automatically pick them up? Or was there a specific commit to our repo to point it at 12.2.3?
Yeah, so one of the problems with how we're building Ceph right now until they make changes upstream is that we pick whatever is in their APT repositories. And right now, we're using Luminous, and they've just upgraded Luminous to 12.2.3. So every time we build a Docker image, we're going to pick the latest. There is no way to control which minor version we pick up. That's changing as part of the work happening in the Ceph container repo. But right now, we're kind of stuck with that.
Right. Unless we choose not to recycle the build agent and then we keep the cached version, but that's not good.
It's very fragile, and we knew this was the case, but we also knew that there was going to be a fix upstream for that. And so I think it's fine for 0.7.1. We should take 12.2.3, and then hopefully for the 0.8 release, we'll start using the images that are published by Ceph container.
Mm-hmm. It sounds like they're planning on that in the next couple of weeks, even, or fairly soon.
Yeah. They took some of the stuff in the make files that we were using and added a bunch of other things, and so that should help.
Okay, that sounds good then. And then could you all walk me through a little bit more about the agent, recycling yesterday that happened and what full effect that has?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, by stopping the agent, an agent will have reused Docker images from previous builds for more efficient builds. So since we wanted to pick up Ceph 1223, we thought, well, let's just recycle the build agent. And so that's why I recycled them. And then the Docker cache was gone and brought up a new build there to pick that up. Does that answer your question? Or?
Yes, that does. And then going further a little bit on that, what is the scope of a Jenkins agent? Is that an EC2 instance or?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so that maps one-to-one to that.
Yeah, and there's nothing on it that we care about. So, you can really kill them at any point. The only thing that happens is that it's a longer build because there's no image caching at all. But that's exactly the effect we wanted. We wanted to get the image caching out of the, so.
Mm-hmm. Is there a way that we can specify the Ceph version? So we always have to, push a change to the Docker file to say, use this new version.
Yeah, well, that's what Bassam was saying, and soon the Ceph team is going to be fixing that upstream so we can pull certain packages.
It should be for 0.8. I think this will all be fixed, and especially, and we'll talk about some of the backend changes. If we start using different images, we'll just use the Ceph container one, and they're going to be labeled with specific tags that are up to minor versions. So I honestly don't know how they're going to solve the problem of if there was a security update to the base OS image and the APT repository has moved on. I don't know how they're going to rebuild it with an old version. So, but that's something worth taking up with them.
Yeah.
Is that something that you're aware of that they are already tracking, or is that kind of an out in the ether issue?
It came up in a few issues, but I'm not sure where the authoritative issue is for it. I'll take a note and I'll add it to the long list of things that they're tracking.
Okay. So I wrote down here, as I'm sure you all can see, that I will follow up on running the 0.7.1 release and making sure that gets out, and then verifying that the Helm charts have now been updated as well after that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Does anybody else have anything to discuss for 0.7, or does that cover it for everybody?
Does the picking up the 12.2.3 fix the issue with Ceph Manager and Prometheus?
It does. Yep. So that's this guy down here. That is fixed in 12.2.3. So we'll get that for free with the release today.
Okay. And are there any?
Right now, so you can.
Go ahead, Alexander.
Because right now the Ceph Manager Prometheus metrics are broken, so we really need this update of Ceph.
Okay, cool.
But that's going to happen now, as I understand, right?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And we also, so that's for 0.7 release branch, and we also are getting 12.2.3 for free in master as well, because the Jenkins agents caches were blown away.
That's right.
Yeah.
Excellent. So so that covers all avenues then, I believe.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Would anything?
Go ahead, Alexander.
Just a second, the car is driving by. So, is there anything speaking against dropping the agent or the cache, at least, I don't know, once a week? Because, without dropping the cache, we wouldn't see if there, I don't know, a package or something goes bad, to put it like that.
Well, no, the caches are super safe. The only reason that this issue happens is that because of this, we don't have the packages for Ceph pinned. But if there is a change in upstream Ubuntu, even when we build, we will pick up a new Ubuntu release, even with the caching, because we run all the base images with --pull, which means that if there's a change somewhere upstream, we'll pick up the whole chain. So it seems very safe to me, except for this one issue we identified.
Okay, I see now.
All right, that sounds good for 0.7 for me. So I also wanted to discuss the much higher rate of continuous integration pipeline failures we're seeing now. This may or may not be related to the Jenkins agents being reset yesterday, but we are seeing what we previously believed to be random failures. We're seeing them now at a much higher rate. Travis, did you happen to have any insight on that from last night? I did not follow up myself.
Yeah, I was thinking more about this, and we have seen a pattern where it seems like agents that are reused, like same EC2 instances, will have a higher rate of failure. And we had several master builds in a row fail, which confirmed that too, because they were one right after the other. This morning I started the master build again, so all the agents were stopped because no builds have been running, and the build succeeded now. So there's something about warm agents that tends to cause these issues between. There must be builds leaving things behind or running over each other when a new build starts. So if I feel like either we need to. It feels like there's a Jenkins setting that we can change that maybe so it uses a fresh agent every time, or I don't know. Is there a timeout that says how long Jenkins instances stay up for the next build, or if we can? I wanted to look for a setting like that, but I haven't yet.
So a couple questions then on that. To me, like I would have a preference for, if it's possible, that is, to figure out what the stale state is. If it's something that should be in the responsibility of the test framework itself to clean up and it's not cleaning up appropriately, then, I would like to be able to fix it there, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, but I don't know if we know what that exactly is, or if we can figure that out in any reasonable time frame. But then the other question would be about what is the current? Do you know what the current Jenkins configuration is in terms of how long a agent instance will be idle before it terminates it completely, such that the next build that comes up will get a fresh and completely new EC2 instance?
It seems like it's like 10 minutes, and if there's no build, then it stops. But
it stops, but it does not delete the instance. We stop the instance, but it keeps its state. So.
And is that for an indefinite time period until we manually delete the
Correct.
completely? Oh, okay. So,
well, that for the agents, well, there's two. I guess I don't know if there's types of agent or whatever, but there's the main agent that runs the build, and then there's the other individual agents that run each Kubernetes 1.6, 1.7, 1.8. End-to-end tests, right? Those agents seem like they start up and they go away, but then they're reused. But those are terminated. It looks like, and we don't. Well, we reuse them, so I wonder if we can not reuse those agents, even though the main agent is reused.
Yeah, my gut says that we should understand what the failure is before we start changing things.
Yeah, and
it feels like we're making assumptions about stale state, when it could be just a unit test failure that's intermittent, or so.
Yeah, well, and the most common failure when this happens is that it says it couldn't. What was it? It tries to delete the operator or the cluster that. Or start one that doesn't exist. Anyway, something where it exists and it shouldn't, or it doesn't and it should, and so it fails. Where it's the only way it could happen is it seems like a state from a previous build. But I'll look again and see if maybe there's some logging to add to help track it down or something.
Yes, I just looked at one of the builds in the PR pipeline that I've been having a lot of problems with since yesterday. And yet this is the exact same error again of third-party resource data's .extensions default already exists for the object store on Helm. That's pretty much the error we see every time.
That seems like a cleanup issue, or where the test framework does leave some state behind or something. So,
right. Yeah.
And then it seems independent of Jenkins and agents to me.
Well, if the agents start up clean, we don't seem to see it.
We never had agents that start up clean.
So Travis, you're saying there's a difference in lifecycle policies between the main Jenkins agents and then the what the agents that run just like a 1.6 Kubernetes pipeline?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Because I see instances right now called Jenkins slave public. Let's see. Well, and I also see Jenkins public 1.7 and 1.8 that are running. There must be a build running right now. And those seem to go away when there's no builds running. Just those latter two. But
Okay.
anyway.
Yeah, let's maybe spend a little more time on that offline.
Right.
Yeah, and I took a note to open an issue on this too, so we're tracking it because I do not think we have something open for that yet.
Oh yeah, we should.
Yeah. All right, so we'll follow up on that then. All right, so the next agenda item I had on here was talking about the roadmap. So I have a draft of the roadmap that's up and running here and this page. And so this is taking a very high level look at some of the upcoming Rook milestones, or 0.8, 0.9, and 1.0. So let's start going through what some of the features are for the next milestone here, 0.8. So one of the big things that we want to accomplish here is it's something that we had gotten feedback on in the CNCF acceptance process of being able to enable other alternate storage backends besides just Ceph. So we need to get started on the design for that, very quickly and be able to reach a consensus about how best to approach this. And then we're going to have to do some refactoring that's obviously got to be front loaded, across the repository to be able to, enable this and have other backends besides just Ceph. One potential backend to start with besides Ceph would be Minio. It's a popular repository, it's a popular project. And then a big advantage of going after one is that Minio specifically is that it does not have a very complicated set of configuration and deployments process, so it's achievable. And then also, having a second backend in general would be able to help us kind of vet our design and make sure that we have the right abstractions and factoring to be able to in a sane way support more than one backend.
I'd say also that Minio has a Helm chart today, and it's fairly limited. Like that, it doesn't even do erasure coding or doesn't even set up Minio to do some of the things that it does well. And that's why an operator or a controller for Minio, I think, makes a lot of sense. So that seems like an interesting backend to a second the first other backend besides Ceph to add would be makes it interesting.
The first second backend.
Yeah.
Right. As part of that design, I think too. Well, when I started this design, I think what felt like I was missing, and now I'm realizing is that including what's the scenario? What would be the motivation in this case for Minio users to come to Rook to then go run Minio, right? So I guess here's what here's why and the motivation that.
Sorry, guys. Could I just jump in? As I have to leave in a few minutes, I would just like to ask you guys for review and feedback on the Mon stateful set pull request. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I meant to ask you about that.
Yeah.
So that, I'll look at that again. And any more findings?
If you have any questions for it? Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I'll follow up with you for sure.
Thank you. Have a good meeting. Bye.
Thank you, Alexander.
Bye.
Yeah, and Travis, one of the points that Bassam had just made too, I thought was a fairly persuasive argument for the why of Minio, or the benefit that it brings, because their existing Helm chart, Bassam said, is very limited, and a lot of the features that Minio is capable of can't even be enabled with that, like erasure coding. So that would be a why somebody would want to use Rook and an operator as opposed to their limited Helm chart.
The Helm, I mean, this is a common pattern and actually a core premise of Rook. Most storage systems and stateful workloads go as far as using, stateful sets, but don't go any further today. And as a result, you don't get to do things like, scaling them, dealing with things like, if they have any kind of consistency requirements while they're scaling, quorums, setting up failure domains, setting up, migrating, replicating stuff across failure domains, being sensitive to how often that happens. All of those things are, left to as an exercise to a human, right? And so Minio is no exception. And it just seems like a popular project and might be a good place for us to start.
Yeah.
And I think the interesting thing here is it grounds the design around multiple backends and refactoring. So
Right, having something tangible to make sure that our design is, kind of vet the design.
Sure.
Right. And I guess part of that would be good to clarify in the design doc is why Rook should provide that and how it already has this infrastructure and whatever to make it easier to implement and whatever, as opposed to Minio writing their own operator, like Prometheus has its own operator or whatever.
Yeah, and I think that will become apparent as you look at the design.
Right. Yeah. Great.
Awesome. I realized I was on mute for a while there. Sorry. So, Kubernetes, the next item here on the list, Kubernetes has a couple of different options and for being able to extend the platform and define your own custom resources. Currently, Rook is using custom resource definitions, which are somewhat limited and rigid in what they enable you to do. API aggregation is a much more flexible way of defining and extending the Kubernetes API, and gives you a lot of features, like validation and multi-versioning, custom logic in there, like merging for patches, support for upgrade and patching, stuff like that. Front loading this work, if we're going to change from using CRDs to API aggregation, would be important as well, because that's part of defining and solidifying our API surface area, right?
Yeah, they're definitely a lot more powerful, and especially the versioning is a worry on my mind and on my list.
It's a huge issue for us right now. I'd argue that it's completely busted, our story right now. It's like we have to ask the user to go literally transform an old CRD to a new one if we upgrade it.
Right. Yeah.
And have to write tools that are outside of it. And it looks like as of 1.7, there is now, CRDs were introduced in 1.7 and API aggregation was introduced in 1.7. And it looks like all there's a ton of flexibility in API aggregation that does not exist in CRDs.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, I agree. Just the versioning question alone, and the validation even better.
Yeah.
So
were CRDs a mistake then?
It allowed us to start in a simpler place, for sure.
It was a continuation of TPRs, and that which was where we started. So it was a simpler transition from from TPRs to CRDs. Than it was to go to API aggregation. But it does look like everybody's building around API aggregation now. So, that's the path forward.
Yeah, so it seems fairly clear that we, want to accomplish this. In terms of I guess we don't need to be discussing resources for this right now. It's just kind of defining what the roadmap is and what we want to accomplish. So the next item I had on the roadmap here is, our existing CI pipelines and build, release, promotion pipelines. All that is hosted in a Jenkins instance that we need to migrate over to something hosted and owned by the CNCF. I don't know, what all that entails, but I don't think it's entirely trivial, and it's probably going to take a fair amount of work to do that. Is there any comments on this item?
It is going to be a lot of work, and we have to figure out how to stage it. But I'd recommend that we start with talking to the CI team at the CNCF and putting a plan together. We are going to need essentially an owner for this.
Do we have any idea who has the skill set that would be able to help out with this?
There was a potentially John from Quantum said he potentially can help with this, but I haven't had a confirmation on that.
Can you find out if he's interested?
Yeah, I'll follow up on that.
Okay.
Yeah, he'd be a very natural one, great to have on board.
Yeah, he certainly has the skill set to accomplish this. No question about that.
Cool.
Okay. Another thing that I would like to accomplish is getting together, design or early support for, snapshotting and policies around that. One benefit that gives us is that helps solidify and also vet, some of the design we have for multiple storage backends. And so defining these, common abstractions and commonality across the different storage providers with something like snapshotting and the policies associated with them would go a long way also in strengthening our story around multiple storage backends and also vetting it at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So there's still work, I believe. I don't know how well it's captured. Somebody can perhaps comment on this for running least privileged and also security issues in general. I think a lot of these were associated with what we saw in OpenShift, and I don't know what all the scope of the work that's left there, but I know it's not completed.
Yeah, so there, I think there was a bunch of cleanup and unit test cleanup to get the Rook API and CLI out of the tree, and that enables using less, the whole security design around namespaces and removing or reducing the number of service accounts and all of that. There's already work that started there, and I think it got stuck on there is just so much unit tests that use the Rook API.
Yeah.
So it's going to need someone to go remove the API and CLI completely and fix all the unit tests.
Mm-hmm.
And then the rest of the work can resume.
Yeah.
So this feels like a couple of days of grunt work.
Right.
But it'll be out of the way.
Right. I know that I have a ton of background and context around, what the API service is used for, and also potential replacements for it that can give the same functionality that the integration tests are relying on the API service for currently.
Mm-hmm.
So I may be a good candidate to address that.
Well, and maybe we could share some of that load somehow if it, because we both have so much context there.
Yeah, we do.
And then, because it'd be good to get the least privileged work going.
Yeah, and I think once that's removed, we can put all the new, the rest of continue the work on fixing up namespaces and service accounts, and that should get us a lot closer to a better security model.
And Bassam, you wrote a one-pager design for the secure service accounts and namespaces and security associated with that, right?
Yes, I did. It's actually been reviewed and it's in the design doc.
Oh, cool! So it's already in master in the design folder. Yeah. Awesome! Great! Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Oh, by the way, back on API aggregation, if you want to put someone's name by it, I'll be happy to take that.
I think we can worry about that when we have issues opened up in the repo. Then we can worry about putting names on there now, or then. Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's a pattern there that's emerging with a thing called API Server Builder. I know that a couple of guys here are looking at it, so it might be good to share notes here on how to get this going.
Great.
Awesome. So the next one I have here is about running on arbitrary persistent volumes. That's something that we've had a desire to do for a couple milestones, but it has been kicked down the road a couple of times. So my understanding of this feature is that it would enable Rook in general to be, backed by, Google persistent disks if you're running in Google, or EBS volumes if you're running in Amazon. Anything that can be surfaced as a persistent volume could be used as the, for lack of a better term, disks to support Rook. So Bassam, do you see that having impact beyond Ceph and OSDs? Does that start getting into the multiple storage backends as well, I assume?
I think it gets into Ceph and other backends because with Ceph it's most likely local volume, although things like EBS are interesting too. Basically, there is a notion of a lower storage cluster substrate, which we build storage systems on top of. Usually it's local disk, but it doesn't have to be. And I think that ties the running arbitrary PVs and whatever we end up doing as the storage cluster or cluster scope or whatever ends up being, using that. So I think this is a very critical feature, honestly. Right now, this whole hoster thing, it's not a good place to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it feels like around this, there's also a bigger question of, well, what if Rook made it easier to use arbitrary PVs even without running the backend? And does that? I'm not sure what that means yet, but it feels like if I'm running in AWS, why would I even start Ceph? Just use EBS.
That's almost an independent question, quite honestly.
Yeah.
So, I think running across availability zones, faster failover time, you wrote a blog on it. So
right. Yeah, there's definitely a scenario for it. It feels like there's
and for other backends, I think it's even more of the case that there should be a loose coupling between the backend and the actual storage substrate underneath it, local volumes or not. So.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. I think we've still got some issues with shutting down nodes or draining nodes, restarting nodes, all that sort of thing. There's still issues floating around there that have not been well addressed. So effort on that would still, we see issues about that pop up on Slack with a not zero frequency as well. So that would go a long way for helping the user base.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I don't know if we have those specific issues well captured, but I know that we have some issues of the general behavior from users, where the general behavior is they restarted a node and things went south.
Yeah, I was just commenting on at least one issue yesterday around that. So yeah, it definitely is
awesome.
A concern.
Okay, then we have some Ceph-specific features and improvements that we'd like to accomplish. One of them is finishing off the work that's I started in 0.7, where we have support for adding and removing nodes to a Ceph storage cluster right now. And then we actually have a lot of work that goes to supporting individual disks, but that's not officially supported by the operator at the cluster level. Yet, and there's a number of prerequisites for that to happen. One of them would be the architecture change of having a single OSD per pod instead of one pod per node. So that changes a number of things in the within the operator. and also the OSD daemon itself, and then also being able to do centralized device discovery so that the operator can make scheduling decisions about nodes from a centralized location is involved in this as well.
Yep. Yeah, I'd like to. I guess that's the highest priority in my mind for. Besides adding and removing disks, or the first part of that is the one OSD per pod.
Right. Yeah, which is a prerequisite. And then there's also the Ceph Manager Balancer module. It seems like in terms of being able to keep PGs balanced across the cluster, that is a cheap way that we can enable that by just have the operator get that module loaded by the Ceph Manager instances, and then start getting that behavior for fairly cheaply.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And then some issues about non-reliability. I have less context here than Travis and Alexander have, but I assume that the stateful set work that Alexander has been working on goes towards this category.
Right. Yeah, and I've been working closely with him, and he's doing a great job investigating this. So I haven't heard the latest on his investigation to get it working, because I wasn't sure how it would work with pod IPs changing and things.
One thing, Travis, that I'm curious about is, I believe there's interest in the Red Hat team to use Rook in the Mimic timeframe, which I believe is May, or at least May-ish. So I'm hoping that we can get more people involved in getting at least the Ceph backend up to Mimic, up to production level in Mimic, if it's going to be deployed with Red Hat Enterprise Storage or whatever.
Right.
And that's going to require more resources on it. So I don't know what the plan is there right now. I've not seen a lot of changes yet. So,
yeah, Jared, if you could add another bullet for that too, upgrading to Mimic. And that should get us a lot of good things. PG management and things.
And then it's also important to note here too that the work around multiple storage backends and refactoring the code base, that's going to have moving parts and pieces of the code base moving around. So we'll need to make sure that that's done up front and quickly to make sure that we're not stepping on toes for the Ceph people wanting to do specific features for Ceph.
Right. Okay.
All right. So that's what I have for 0.8. It feels like a whole lot.
It's huge.
So I'm kind of wondering if there's things that can be bumped, out of 0.8.
I feel strongly about the multiple storage backends and getting API aggregation, all that stuff figured out early, because it's going to set us on, the right path going forward. And so we have to front load it.
The arbitrary PVs part of that, or
I don't see how it can't be.
Yeah.
So those seem, and then removing the API and CLI, we just have to do.
For security, you can make that a sub bullet of privilege.
I can see volume snapshotting and policies falling off unless we can get some more help. Maybe there's this whole Google Summer of Code thing we're now part of. Maybe that's an item for that. Maybe a good outcome here is that we have a bunch of issues open and we can put help wanted on them. So there has to be some pass through the issues and to do that.
If we tag something as help wanted, we probably don't want to assign it to 0.8 though, or can't rely on it at least.
Well, we should start there. We should, if we're not going to do it, let's put help wanted on it.
Right. Yeah.
And I think, Jared, you were going to take the action item to open up a couple of tasks or projects in Google Summer of Code thing, right?
Yes,
If
that
it's
is on
not
my
too
list
late.
of things to think
Yeah.
about.
There might be a deadline on it, so you might want to look at it soon.
So it seems like that getting issues opened that correspond to the roadmap and identifying ones for help wanted, that's kind of a required step, or that would give us what we need to then go ahead to go over to the Summer of Code and kind of file things there.
I agree. And then front loading the designs, the one pagers, getting those reviewed, and then identifying the work should bound us. And then Travis, I think on your side, it'll be good to get clarity on who else is involved in making the Ceph specific changes.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I haven't had much communication with them yet. Starting next week, though.
Great.
Here, let me try to capture this real quick, and then I'll come back to another comment I had. So we need to get. Oh, I guess you all didn't see it on my screen, but a Docker update just popped up and stole my focus. That's a hard no on that one.
Yeah, I got that about 10 minutes ago.
Okay. So I was thinking that this removing the Rook API and CLI needs to be done soon. That can be done in 0.8. But then all the security work that enables probably can get bumped to 0.9 instead. So we'll start with this and then do the later security work in the next milestone.
I don't know. With all the security work that's already been done, is it pretty close though already? Once the API and CLI is gone,
It's very close, yeah. And I think it has an owner. I think Ilya was wanting to push this forward.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I thought it was a fair amount of work left for being, they're doing the right namespace and service account stuff.
I think it's
Really
probably at the 60-70% line. It got stuck on unit tests.
okay. I didn't realize that.
So if I don't know, Travis, if you want to chip in there or help with that, well, maybe Jared, you can look at multiple storage backend design, or I don't know how we split the work, but
this is on my plate, the design for multiple storage backends, and that's going to consume all my time. So if Travis is looking for something to do with his cycles, then
maybe
perfect for that.
We talked about switching a couple things, and I think I'd start there.
Yeah, I mean, if you can knock the unit tests out in the next few days, we can get the whole security thing done this week.
Okay, good. Well, that's good to know. I thought there was much more extensive amount of work left to do on security. I did not know that. Excellent. Okay, cool. I would venture myself to go ahead and already bump the volume snapshot and policy stuff to 0. Yeah. I just don't see that happening in 0.8.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So let's
before we go to 0.9, just a question maybe to bring up again. So, Kubernetes 1.6 with TPRs, are we at the point we can drop support for that? There's a number of upgrade issues that would come with that.
Yeah, I think the last lagging thing is OpenShift. So where is OpenShift right now?
Well, it looks like the latest OpenShift is on Kubernetes 1.7. If I was looking in the right place, I just glanced at it yesterday.
And what's the deployment, for that?
I'm not sure on that.
Okay.
So
I'd love to drop TPRs, and especially if we're going to API aggregation.
Exactly.
So if we go to API aggregation, we're 1.7, and the minimum version would be 1.7, I believe.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right.
Maybe we can make that as part of the 0.8 release.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it feels like it needs to be. Well, and even especially by the time we release 0.8, 1.6 should be even less.
Okay.
Just going to put it on the roadmap here for now then.
Mm-hmm.
Or say support. Okay. So we've got about a little bit more than 10 minutes, so let's try to get through this here as well. The amount of items that are fleshed out in 0.9 becomes much less than already in 0.8. But the big thing that still needs to be addressed is upgrade, in an automated fashion. We've been kind of limping along with manual upgrade support for, with the user guide, and Travis did a good job of updating that to support, to make sure that it works with the 0.7 release as well. But we need to get to an automated solution.
Mm-hmm. Well, with all the 0.8 changes, by the way, what would happen if we couldn't support upgrades from 0.7 to 0.8? Since we're still in alpha, can we make that statement? I think we'll try our best, but it seems like those are some pretty big breaking changes.
I don't know enough yet about API aggregation to know if anything at all is possible from going to CRDs to API aggregation, but I have a feeling that that's going to be either really difficult to support or not possible. I don't know.
Right. Yeah. So I guess I just wanted something to keep in mind, that upgrading in the future may be really hard until we make all those big changes. So yeah, we can move on for now.
Yeah, and we may need to be okay with that to get to the right architecture still. The operator running in high availability is still a single point of failure right now. If the operator dies for some reason, there's no, besides the standard Kubernetes, support, there's no, master, slave, or.
I believe that comes also with API aggregation, because the controller manager as part of API aggregation does leader election. So
we may get that already.
Yeah. Okay, that's good to know. We have durability of state as well. That was in a previous milestone. That's on 0.9 now for supporting local storage, local volumes, and being able to in a disaster recovery make sure that configuration, since metadata state like that, can be regenerated. Mm-hmm. That happened to somebody recently, didn't it, Travis? Where they accidentally deleted all of the CRD, the operator, all that sort of stuff, that deleted a lot of things. They had to rebuild their cluster from what was existing on disk. Did that go well for them?
So they didn't end up doing it, actually. They said it was just a test cluster, but they wanted to know if it was possible in case of it was a production cluster. So I said, I think he opened a ticket so we could document that. But I haven't gone there yet.
Okay.
To actually try it. It should be possible, but yeah, I think people would feel better if it was documented and tested.
So we'd already discussed, moving to API aggregation, which would give us the ability to do some of these features about, more rich validation of CRDs and status and progress and all that. So we'll get the ability to do those with API aggregation, but there's still work associated with doing them to support, enable and support those types of features. So I'm thinking that just, making the switch to API aggregation is all that's really going to be accomplishable in 0.8. And then using some of the abilities for more rich features to enable those features will be more possible in 0.9.
Yep.
Cool.
Mm-hmm. And we already talked about snapshots. We moved that from 0.8 to 0.9. And then the Ceph features I have here are, improved data placement and pool configuration, which there's been some discussion that I can't recall right now about from the Red Hat team, I believe, that fits better in the Ceph platform itself as opposed to at the Rook level. So there may be more discussion there especially about what's going to be happening in the Mimic timeframe that may be addressing some of this more appropriately at the Ceph level.
And by the way, the if Mimic is in May, that's still in our O.8 time frame, right? Yeah, I guess we put that in O.8, but there'll be more of that in the future. Yeah, okay. Sorry.
And then also for SFFS, using block devices with RBD, we have dynamic volume provisioning for that, and PVCs, persistent volume claims, but we do not have the same experience for SFFS. So enabling that might be something to address. I haven't heard an enormous amount.
I'd love to see the Ceph volume stuff move earlier into even 0.8, but it's going to require somebody to kind of drive it.
It's in the same vein as some of the changes associated with adding and removing disks. That's in the same code part of the code base, and some of the same logic goes on some of those paths there. But yeah, getting a resource for that may be pretty difficult.
Right. Yeah. Well, great area for the whole volume provisioning area. Losing Steve is a whole.
Bassam, would you like me to move the Ceph volume stuff up into 0.8 for now?
I mean, it's not broken right now, so I'd say probably not until we have some owner for it.
Okay. And so that's all I have for 0.9. And for 1.0, to get there, we're going to have to, a lot of the types that we have defined in our custom resources will need to, make it to stable or V1 version. That's, obviously a hugely nebulous goal that has a whole lot of smaller tasks to get to that point.
Mm-hmm.
And then
the CSI piece should probably move to 0.9 and under Ceph features.
Yeah.
Ooh. Okay. So there will definitely need to be some more thinking about 1.0, because basically we're just saying to get to 1.0, we need to be 1.0.
We need to declare stable.
That's pretty light right now, and we'll have to address that.
Well, and before stable, we need to declare beta for the different features.
Yeah, so I think for that one, I don't think the project as a whole should be declared alpha and beta.
Right.
But I think the types should be. So we should figure out which types are in what stage.
Yep.
Just like, say, Kubernetes has alpha and beta for types, but so I'd suspect that some of the base types for cluster and all that stuff go to beta first.
Yeah, and hopefully we can get there for a couple of them in 0.8, but with all those changes, that may be...
Well, once they go beta, that means we're supporting them, upgrading them going forward, and once that happens, with the API integration, we should be able to take them to V1 on
V1. Right. Yep.
Okay. So the next step here is to update the roadmap.md in the Rook repo with some of this stuff. So that'll be part of a pull request, which then has the availability for more commentary to solidify this before it gets committed to the repo. So I'll take a stab then when I open up that pull request at some of these items about what types go to beta, and then we can discuss it in the pull request. Does that sound reasonable?
Mm-hmm.
Sounds good.
All right.
Thanks for driving, Jared.
Yeah, no problem. And then was there anything else we needed to talk about today? We already addressed this here. And this is Alexander requested to take a look at the Monstable set PR. Travis said he'd do that. And this is another follow-up too. So, okay, so I'll get, I've got to run the 0.7.1 release. I'll get an issue open for the, integration test failures we're seeing, and get a PR open for the roadmap as well. And then Travis, you and me and Bassam may need to get together soon to kind of identify, it's been a long time since we did a triage period. So we've got some cruft and some housekeeping that needs to be done for issues in the repo.
Yeah, I made a quick pass through it yesterday.
Yeah, that's
true.
We
got lots of emails, but there's more to do. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so we could talk about this. Talk about that sometime soon too. Okay. Did anybody have anything else before we call it a day today?
Sounds good.
Just an excellent meeting, Jared.
Thank you, Dan. Appreciate it. All right, guys, then we'll get back to our normal schedule for the next meeting, and I'll make sure that I'm trying to get a calendar appointment out. Bassam, are you the owner of the Rook Dev Google group?
I don't know. I started it, but I've not seen any emails, so I'm not sure. I'll look.
Okay, that'd be great. Yeah, if you can add me to that or something so that I can kind of maintain that and send out calendar appointments to it, then that'd be perfect. Okay, great, guys. Thanks for joining today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. See you.